he got back to me and he calls me on the phone and he was so aggressive. Like, he's like, who the hell do you think you are? I get so many of these calls every day. Like, life coach this, life coach that. And he's like going at me. He's like, why should I help you? And I'm like, oh, this is my time to shine because I'm used to this because I have the commercial real estate background. I'm like, okay, like let's play. So anyways, I told him some of my stories, some of my life experiences, and he was like, oh, holy shit. He was like, okay, I'll take you on. He was like, I'm with it. I was so excited because it was like everything started flowing in. And that's how I always know when I'm on the right path.
All right, welcome to the New Age Human Podcast. I'm your host, John Astasio. Today, we're talking with Mallory Chila. She's actually an intuitive performance coach. She has a background in commercial real estate, and she knows the world of networking and making those deep connections with people for business. So awesome if you're an empath, entrepreneur, or conscious creator, or all three of those things, this is for you. So some of the things that we talk about is advice for empaths in business. This includes maintaining your energy. Now, before we begin, if you want to support the show, check out Telegram if you want to join the conversation. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review so we can attract a lot of good potential guests and help grow the show. Also, before I forget, make sure you join the newsletter so that we can stay in touch just in case we deal with some censorship issues. You will get up to date and first time dibs on events coming up and future discounts on products and services. Let's get to the show. So I want to know more about what you're doing and what got you into doing what you're doing, right? I consider you someone who is a conscious creator, right? You found something that's working for you. You found something that's working for other people, and you're doing it and you're moving forward. So yeah, please share what you do.
Absolutely. So I could start with just a quick thing with the event and then I can go into mine. But it's funny, we started talking about the water, right? That Candlewood Lake. So it's right on the lake, and water, of course, helps you flow. And so I'm really hoping there's going to be a good flow between the speeches, the stories, the activities, everything that's going on. My whole intent really, conscious creator kind of sums it up, where I had this idea at the beginning of the year and it came to me in a dream, actually. And this year in and of itself has probably been one of the most chaotic, so many things going on in my life, right? And I think it was March or April, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna on top of this throw my first event, and I want to get 150 people, out of nowhere, right? And I'd call that a download. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I've never had an event before. I like coordination. I like people. I have a background in sales, all of that. So I'm like, how hard could it be?
It's usually
hard.
Not a good
it's
way
really
to start
hard.
something, right? Whenever someone's like, how hard can it be? You're like, you're thinking it's going to be hard, and you're selling yourself.
Absolutely. So, I just kind of trusted that, because I'd made the intent to just meet as many people as I can this year, to just network, keep an open mind, see who comes into my life. And I trusted that I'd kind of be connected to the right people and I'd figure it out. And it's been such an amazing process, because at this point I have around 100 tickets sold, and it's all people I've met this year, which is just that amount of, going out there and figuring out what all these people are about and welcoming in the new while also letting go of some of the old has been such a process. And that's a lot of what I teach. So, you asked what I do around conscious creating. And like I said, my background was in sales, commercial real estate for 10 years. And I just kept getting kind of this feeling, this calling to do something different. And that stemmed back to when I was a teenager. I had cancer and I almost died. And that was what I would call my first spiritual awakening. And, then you get distracted, you forget, people don't realize, you can have these things happen to you and then you kind of get pulled right back into what I'd call the matrix. And, you're looking for the money and the success and all these things. And I for years and years and years, that's what I was doing, and I was doing well. And then right around COVID, I think many other people hit with some personal experiences. I had 3 family deaths back to back. I lost my person, my grandfather, and I left my job, which was corporate. And so I decided to take a new path, and I really had all these different messages kind of coming in, and I just trusted it. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to figure it out. And so I took this coaching course called psychosynthesis coaching. It's a spiritually based psychology. and did hundreds of hours, found some really amazing mentors, and I've been doing that ever since. So I did my coaching, and I found a mentor, and I didn't really know how to kind of get going with this, right? It was so different than what I was used to. I knew that it would come to be because I felt like I was using my God-given gifts. So I was like, I got to trust the process, but I know I need a mentor. So like, both and that polarity of like, all right, I'll come to me, but like I have to get some work. And I reached out to a bunch of different coaches in this area with like it was kind of like, I don't know how you would describe it, but like the email, it was cheesy. It was a cheesy email. It was like, step into your next phase, ... mentorship, like just so cheesy. And I sent to like 10 coaches. I was like, I need a mentor. Like, I got to figure out what this whole thing is. And
wait, so you sent it to coaches that are doing what you're doing now, but they've done it for longer.
Yes. And I got a lot of rejection, just like anything else. And there was this,
they're like, no, I don't
I know how to help you. That whole thing was like, why would I like create it was very interesting because
that's true.
Why would I want to treat my competition? But it's ironic, right? Because it's a field where you want to help people. So I've found a lot of polarity right off the bat there, where I really had to like tune in to the people. And this one gentleman, Dr. Brett, he got back to me and he calls me on the phone, and he was so aggressive. Like, he's like, who the hell do you think you are? I get so many of these calls every day. Like, life coach this, life coach that. And he's like going at me. He's like, why should I help you? And I'm like, oh, this is my time to shine, because I'm used to this, because I have the commercial real estate background. I'm like, okay, like let's play. And I ended up telling him a little bit of my story, my life experiences, because I am very young. I'm only 28. And, sometimes people need a little bit of gray hair to like have that trust.
You can always dye that too.
I'm not going to dye it. I'm going to dye it the other way when it starts going gray. I do have one coming in here.
Yeah. I'm not condoning, falsifying, but one, I wanted to throw a joke in there, but two, you never know. Don't go by the gray hair, because some people do that on purpose.
That's a good point. Well, it's just a good lesson too of like, you just never know, where you might learn something or who might have something nice. Like, you just never know with people, right? People are always judging and always have these assumptions immediately on meeting someone or listening to them. And like, there's so many experiences and feelings and, just life behind that person that you have no idea about. So anyways, I told him some of my stories, some of my life experiences, and he was like, oh, holy shit. He was like, okay, I'll take you on. He was like, I'm with it. And I was so excited because it was like everything started flowing in. And that's how I always know when I'm on the right path, is like the people come in, the help comes in. And he's a sports psychologist, and he teaches fundamentals of the mental game. So he trains like young athletes. And this for me was like a really good place to start, because athletes and entrepreneurs need to have a lot of the same mindset techniques. And they have such a high level of performance to begin with, that when you're going past like accountability coaching or something like that, like they'll do the meditation, they'll actually do the breath work, and they'll apply it, and more open to these other ways of just having like a higher level of performance. And so that's how I got started. And it's kind of shifted here or there with different clients as it's gone on. Like, I have some women entrepreneurs, which is great too. They are juggling so much. It's just really always interesting to kind of, every session's different. Like, one day it's about the family, the next week it's about business strategy. And so really it's been a long journey, and I'm still kind of crafting it, but it's all very intuitive, and it comes down to kind of the same, fundamentals of mindset, meditation, presence, and really tuning into intuition. For guys, we'll call that going with your gut, but like tuning into what that is and doing the exercises and, getting the reps in to be able to apply that to like real life scenarios, to your relationships, to business, all of it.
So interesting how you got a guy to be your mentor, and it works for both parties because he's niching down to sports. Do you know the specific people that are coming to you that you're attracting? I'm actually curious.
Like, am I aware of like what I attract? So it's funny you asked that, because I feel that I actually attract more men. And my intent going in, I was like, I really want to help women. Like, I've obviously, I'm a woman. Like, I don't know if we can still say that. Like, I am a woman. I'm
Are you sure?
But like, I was like, this is a really good, like, And it's interesting because I do attract a lot of men. And I had a new client come to me a couple days ago, and it was from a past real estate client in commercial real estate. And these guys are like high level execs, like they're worth like lots and lots of millions of dollars, and they really just don't have anyone to talk to. And so they're so fascinated by like this new niche that I'm in, and they're like, I really want to set up a session. And for me, that brings me a lot of joy, because I'm like, wow, like one, they trust me enough to open up to me, which is like the best. And two, I know that whatever I'm giving them back is what they really need, and that there's a reason that that connection took place. And so it kind of is an honor to like some of the past things I've done to be able to bring that into the future and like help them through some personal stuff. But like, I've just never gotten this off my chest in like 40 years. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. Like, let's talk about it. Like, no judgment, right? Like creating that space. So it's been mostly men. And I think the reason is like something that I actually teach is energy and the yin and the yang, the polarity, right? Feminine energy, masculine energy. And I know myself, I have a lot more masculine energy than feminine. Like I look feminine, whatever, but like in the environments I've been in have been much more yang. And so you adapt to that and you attract more of like attracting like. And so it's interesting that I've seen that across the board. And sometimes I'll take some time to develop the more yin side so that there is that balance. And then I'll see like that call for a woman or that collaboration opportunity. And it all comes down to energy. And it's really cool to like see that, apply it, and then also teach it to people.
And I think it's really important, especially now, to get in touch with that yin versus that yang, because one's black, one's white, and they spiral. And I feel like what we're bombarded with from social media, a lot of mainstream stuff, a lot of agenda-like stuff, is more of like a gray circle. You're not really sure what yin is, you're not really sure what yang is, and people are crossing over, they're pushing people to one side, they want their yin disguised as a yang, and reverse. And I feel like your work is definitely important, especially when you're helping people balance that out and step into that power, because each side, right, definitely has its power. And the grass is not necessarily always greener on the other side. Look at your own grass, look at your own yin, your own yang, and it has a purpose. It's about like, getting connected with yourself. Absolutely. Right? Like, do you in saying that, do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I just think it's something that the more aware of it we become, and the more people learn this, the more opportunity there are for like deeper level and authentic relationships and connection. Because you see it all the time, especially like, people who come to me in the relationship realm, like women who are like high power and like you're just crushing in their business. They're like, why do I keep like attracting these wimpy guys? And to me, I'm like, it's so obvious. But to them, they don't understand the process of it, right? And it's the same with like anything else. It's like, if you're unaware of these things, you're going through life unconsciously in any area, like whether it's business or relationships or even friendships, family dynamics, like with siblings and parents. Like if you just hone in on this and really like work with it, because it's going to be different person to person and scenario to scenario. Like someone might be more yin in one area of your life and yang in another, where it's like, hey, try the opposite and let's see what happens. So I think it's really, something that as we start to learn more about, we'll see people get a lot from it.
And now, since you're in this niche, this area of helping people on the mental side of things, first of all, do you consider yourself an empath and identify with that area of just beingness?
Yes, I'm definitely an empath. And beyond that, I'd say I'm a little bit of an intuitive. And, growing up, you don't really understand what that means. And it makes it, I think, well, it adds, of course, but you don't realize that not everyone sees the world that way. And so you have to be careful, when you're younger, you don't understand, right? Like you feel everything. Like when I was younger, I was like crying all the time. Like really like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know, like this happened, like, cause you feel it, right? And so you have to understand how to it's really important to have that empathy, because that's the connection point, right? Like that's what life's about. And so it's a gift, it's a blessing, but also how to make sure to protect yourself, to not be over forgiving. I don't like the word boundaries, but to have ways to make sure that you're recharging and, making sure you're giving back to yourself a little bit, especially in coaching. It's like you have hour-long sessions and you're taking on all of this stuff. So like making sure that I get in nature or I'm eating well, I'm taking the time to do yoga, like that kind of thing is like number one, because empaths will I'm guilty of it. Like you give and you give and you give and you're holding space. And then it's like, you don't always hold that same space for yourself. And so that's something I've had to learn.
And you mentioned nature, you mentioned meditation. For those out there that are listening and watching that are empaths and business owners or looking to get into business, what other things do you recommend that or has worked for you that can help you hold that space, keep your energy without draining it? I'm
Absolutely.
curious.
So sometimes it's really simple things. And I just had this conversation actually yesterday with another business owner, and he was saying, I was starting to feel like I was getting sick and I had to give myself a lighter morning. And it was really, really difficult. He was like, I got stressed out about it. Like I didn't want to take the time to relax. And I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we equate rest with laziness. And so when you reframe that as, no, this is by pulling back, right, that yin and the yang, I'm actually allowing myself to propel forward. So like if you feel that, right, that's also like tapping into your intuition. Take the time, give yourself that space, because then when you come back and you're feeling energized, you're going to be able to perform so much better. And the couple hours that you were going to try to like get through that work where it wasn't going to be your best, it would have been better if you rested and then did it in an hour when you're feeling like 110%. So I would say one is really rest. And that's one personally that I've always struggled with for all those reasons I just said. And then on top of that, it's less technology, which is the toughest because we're connected all the time. But really making sure that you leave it in another room, like having a cutoff time, having connection with certain people like your spouse without any electronics anywhere, like even the TV, like no TV. Getting outside, grounding is a big one, like just feeling your feet in the earth. And there's like a bunch of science that I can go into on that. I won't go into all of it, but like feeling the earth, right? That's grounding. Getting near water's flow. So knowing literally what your intent is before you go outside, what you need, could be the ground, could be water, could be sunlight, right? Vitamin D. Simple stuff,
Yeah.
but like really, really like making it a priority would be like where I start with that. That's like level one. For a level two, I'd say like start meditating, like, figure out how to relax and like feel that in your body. And then if you want to even like go up a level from there, it's visualizing certain colors or visualizations and like having, okay, I have this event, what do I want it to look like? And just like playing it like a movie, like how do you do that? And feeling into it.
I like the meditation of doing a movie and then just really seeing it, right? That's a lot of co-creation going into that, a lot of visual, a lot of doing it before it's done. I love that. Going back to the grounding, right? Did you know that running water, especially waterfalls, emits some of the most negative ions that helps ground you out of all things? And then I believe also the movement of the trees, right? So I love hiking when I was the most stressed. And my wife and I, when we're both stressed and we're like, I don't know what to do, like there's just too much going on. We go to the beach and we walk barefoot right on the, where it's wet, right before the water, That stuff is amazing. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, John, I'm just really, I know
yeah.
you're moving on to it, but I'm a huge hiker too. And what you said about the trees, just like tying it back to my grandfather, right? He was always like my spiritual guide. And like he really was. Like this guy knew about all this stuff like before it was known. I don't know how, but he did. And so I learned at a young age, it would go out and we'd hug the trees. And that sounds crazy, right? Like go outside and hug a tree, like just yeah, like you're like there's like so much that comes up, but you're getting energy from the tree, and like there is something to that where it's like you're connecting with nature. And so I'm with you, big hiker.
Yeah, I love hiking. Love it. With being an empath, right? How does that affect your interaction when I'm trying to get to that networking life? As an entrepreneur, you're an empath, you know it, you know that you can absorb energy, you know you're intuitive, right? And now it's time to network, to meet other people and to sort out who you're going to be friends with, who you're not going to vibe with. And I know, that could be draining. So what has worked for you? Because I remember we met at a networking event and you're like, I hate going to networking events. But I know that it's one of those things where as long as you find the right people and you know what you're doing, like you can do it. But I do feel like that actually I did talk to somebody who is an empath, but doesn't like to go to networking events and they just don't. Any advice? What would you tell that
I've got
person?
a couple of things. And first of all, yes, John, I hate it. And it's funny because people always say, I'm like, I'm shy. Like, I'm an empath. Like, I don't want to go. I'd rather be in a one-on-one. And they're like, you shy? I'm like, yes. I hate going to these things. But just putting in the reps and doing it and going and just like kind of giving yourself a pep talk in the car, right? Like, I'll be like, oh, like I'm tired. I could be doing this, but like, let's just go. Let's see. Like, there could be one connection that changes my life. And then you get in there and it can be overwhelming because there's all these different people, there's these different conversations. And the advice I would give is it depends on like what works for you, but some things could be just find the other person who feels or looks like they're experiencing the same thing. Because there's other people who are also doing that, who are business owners, because it is an advantage to be an empath who is a business. It's huge. There's a lot of success in it. And they're going through the same thing you're going through. So find kind of that person and you might have a really deep conversation with them. And that's going to be like enough for you to be like, okay, I feel full. Another thing is if I just don't feel like talking to anyone, I'll just like go to the bar, I'll go stand somewhere and wait for who gets attracted to me. Because sometimes they're looking for that and they can feel it in you. And so it kind of takes the stress out of like going and starting a conversation if it doesn't feel like that's what you need to do at that time.
It's interesting how you switch it up, and interesting that you mentioned something that goes against like the rules or what you would logically think going into a networking event. I'm going to go and talk to the person that everybody's talking to, or someone most people are told to look at and to judge based off of your posture, how they speak. And you're saying, go to someone who looks like they're not feeling it right now. And as an empath, it's such a huge advantage to be so because you got that intuition on your side. You're not just surface. And I know we all have that intuition. I just feel like an empath trusts it more instead of pushing it off to the side. So it looks like you're saying trust it more, even if it goes against the logic.
Totally. No, you have to trust in that. And I've been doing it a lot this year, especially, and like in the past. And I've found that those people end up being friends, or they end up being the ones who come to your event or whatever, or like end up collaborating in a business sense. Like there's some saying, and I'm going to totally botch it, but it's like something about like the loudest person in the room being the least wise, right? Like, and sometimes like those people who are quiet, like they have so much that you could learn from and you would just never know. And so like networking opportunities, I've had to reframe it myself. And I'd say for empaths, you have to reframe it where it's like, it could change your life. It really can. And just getting past that, okay, this might be something that's putting me out of my comfort zone or might be draining. Like there's something positive that you're going to get from it. And who knows, you might be feeling like, frisky one day and you just end up being the life of the party. Like you just like go and you talk to everyone and that might be like, wow, that's a huge win for me. And I have this one client and she struggles with this so much. And she started practicing it. We started practicing it in her children's mother's group where I'm like, I need you to just go have a conversation with someone and not even have a plan. Like no plan about this. You just go into the conversation and whatever happens, happens. And at first she was like, I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? Like these moms are so mean. And then she would start texting me. She'd be like, I did it. Like I just wanted to, like I was like nervous, but like it felt so good. And so it's like the same thing with networking where like give it to yourself as a homework assignment and have it be a win for the day of like your business list. And then it's going to start feeling really good. And then it'll just be more natural and less draining. And when it is, just offset it with that recharge time.
So something just popped up into my mind. How do you handle, let's talk about networking. How do you handle somebody that you're talking with, it starts off with a good conversation. I think you already know where I'm going with this. This is what it's like to talk to another empath, right? So I'm going to continue just to be clear, right? I don't want to assume everything, but yeah, you're talking to somebody, and then it's just it's this weird barrier that starts to build up where you just feel awkward. You're like, I'm not getting like a good vibe. I'm not getting a good response. I was talking to somebody and we were talking about like, I think dreams or something like that. Like I was trying to find commonality and it just kept on like blank stare, right? So what do you do when you get the blank stare when you're trying to find commonality with somebody in your networking, if that's a good way to ask?
So 2 things that I would say, and this is something, the first one is something my mentor taught me and that I now teach as well, where it's like, sometimes people are just not going to get it. And that's okay. You know, it's not like your job to like kind of like find that middle ground. Sometimes you're just here and they're there and there isn't. It's just not going to click. And that's fine. And so just kind of like accepting it, not taking it as like rejection, like whatever, not your person. Someone else totally going to vibe with it. Will talk to you about it for like 4 hours. And that's beautiful. That's like, you know, what it's all about. The second thing is like, if you're like in that conversation and for whatever reason, like you're feeling that happen, but there's still a reason that you like maybe need to talk to them, or for whatever reason that conversation needs to keep happening, is to just switch the script, right? Like take that second, be like, okay, whatever, this doesn't need to be a super deep connected conversation. I'm not going to get that here. And just talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about, and just stay present with them in that conversation with like a genuine curiousness, because you're not going down that road. You got to pick a different one if you're going to stay in the conversation.
I see something also happening, and I'm sure it's happened with you, and you started talking about a little bit, where you're identifying where the vibe is at, and you're like, you know what, this looks like more of me pulling out what they need and how I can help, and just listening. And I feel like as an empath, tell me if this has happened to you, people just trust you more. It's like unconsciously they want to tell you more. And then it gets to a point where you need to just let it be, and then without draining, change the subject and say, you know what, it's great talking with you. Let's exchange information. And then you start closing it down to move on, because now they're just pouring themselves out, and you don't want to, unless you're a therapist, but like networking events, like people can hide your time, right? I know what I do. I go for the contact, because for me that signifies we're closing down the conversation, because you're here to meet people. And then I move on. I'm like, let's definitely stay in touch. I want to hear more about it. I'm going to go and say hi to some people that I know. Great talking with you. How do you close that conversation? Whether it be someone that is pouring themselves out to you because they need it, or you vibe really well with somebody and you're fighting not to continue the conversation because it's like, as an empath, you're like, finally someone I can vibe with. You're the 4th person, and the other 3 people just suck. Yep. But let's go. Let's keep going. How do you manage that time? I'm curious.
First of all, this happens to me all the time. And honestly, it's an honor, because again, it's like people trust you, they want to talk to you. And so you want to be able to hold space for them. And as an empath, that comes naturally, right? You're like, yeah, tell me everything. They're like, I've never opened up. I've never told anyone this ever, but like XYZ. But then it's like, oh my God, like you're an hour in and there's those other people. So I like your approach with the contact for sure. For me, it's easy because I can just be like, I'm so interested. I want to hear more. Let's set up a session at this time. Like, let's talk on the phone, free of charge, whatever. And so that's really easy as a coach. But for someone else, I've done this in the past, where if you have like an accountability partner or a person who's there at the event, who kind of knows you, who can get you out of those situations, sometimes it's fun to have like a teammate. Like I was at this event the other day and this guy was like going on, and like I could tell it was getting non-business oriented. Like he was like, let's go, like whatever. It started turning in a different direction, and I'm like started to get nervous. I'm like, no, like this is not my intent. And my friend noticed, and he was like, come here, like come take a picture with us. And I was like, I'm so sorry, like I have to go do this, because like the other person like can pick up on that. So if you have someone else in your inner circle who can kind of like, like bob and weave, it's sometimes okay to like have a team player like help you in those scenarios, because it's very difficult, I think, for any empath to like make their way out. Like you've gone so deep and you're like, how do I make my way out of this hole without it being like rude or abrupt, right? Like that's always the thought. And that's like a really quick one, I'd say. But like, secondly, finding another time to do it so that you're getting the most out of the network event.
Yeah. And I'm glad our conversation went this way organically, because I noticed, I'm like, you have an event. The goal was 150 people, and 100 of those people you met. That's huge. That means you're building really good, deep relationships with people when you network, right? And I'm curious, how long ago did you decide you were going to do this 150 event? I'm trying to think of a timeline on how
It
you
was
got that.
April.
Okay.
April, May, June, July, August. So it's been 6 months.
And so 6 months. So not many people connect with 100 people in less than 6 months, let alone have them say, I'm down to invest into a project that you're doing, an event, right? That's fantastic. Knowing that, I feel like that brings a lot of background and value to a lot of what we said, because there's a reason why I'm asking you these questions, because you did something like that, right? And I hope anybody that's listening can appreciate that and take advantage of it, because we're in a season where I feel a lot of entrepreneurs, empaths, conscious creators, that side of the fence, that space is opening up more and more and more. More people are waking up, because there's a lot of variables that are happening, whether it be stars, energy. There's a lot of, we can go into that another time, but it's evident. People are waking up and they're asking questions, and there's a higher level of stress. So if you're in that field of assisting people with that, and health, innovation, anything, any empath that's an entrepreneur, you're going to do very, very well. So I want to encourage anybody listening, if you're thinking of it, go for it. We spoke a lot about networking, why you got into what you're doing, and the directions it's going. Is there anything that we might not have spoken about that you want to kind of close out, and just kind of like any last thoughts, any last advice for anybody?
Well, first of all, everything you said about the timing of people starting to wake up. I mean, I would need a whole nother segment on that, and maybe we can go into it, because there's like math and science and even like statistics and stuff that's come out about like what's going on right now. And then from the energy standpoint, and it's such an opportunity for anyone who's kind of been playing it smaller in the shadows, or empaths, or like the outsiders, to really like stand up and have a voice and say, hey, like, this is my gift. This is why I'm here. Let me use it to help other people and to raise the vibration, right? I think there's like never in human history, I don't feel like that has happened at the level that it's about to and has been happening. So I would say, if you feel that, or if that resonates with you, to really like take that message and use it to like, step into who you're supposed to be. That's all I have to say, really. Authenticity. Yeah. And use it, right? Like, use that uniqueness. Like, we all have things about ourselves that we don't like, or that we don't want the world to see. Like, everyone has that resume self versus that shadow self. Like, that's normal. That's the yin and the yang. Like, it goes back to the same thing. And I think for a long time, everything's been super, super surface level. And now, tuning into those other parts and bringing them out into the light is going to be what changes the world in a positive way.
Absolutely. And I know we can go, if you want, I do feel like we might have piqued some interest, as in, why do we feel like, the world is changing? Do you have anything that you want to add to that? I think that's a really key thing to help somebody who's in that state where they're like, it's easy to think, you know what, there's opportunity out there. I know networking events are coming, but do I really want to go to a networking event if there's, let's say, 50 people and like 2 people are going to be vibing with me? Like, let's set it in and encourage someone to believe and understand that, no, surprisingly, there's a lot more of that, and maybe give them a little reason why you think that.
Well, I think that because I've experienced it a lot more lately myself, where it's like, you start to make these like connections, and again, as an empath, they're going to be deeper to begin with, right? And so you start to form like these groups where you're like, wow, like, I could feel into that. That's something that resonates with me. And you think it's not going to happen, and then you experience it over and over and over, and you say, wow, like, all these people are awake. Like, this is something that, like, did I bring this out of them, or is that already there? And then you start to create these connections. And you don't know where they're going to go. And there's like powers in numbers, right? Like you need a team. Like it's not going to happen on your own. And again, that's a hard thing because I prefer to be alone. I love my alone time. I need at least a couple hours a day, because I need that time. But like when you go out and you're connecting with other people and you're seeing like this person has this idea, this person has this skill set. I'm not good at that. I don't know how to do that. Or like, I don't know that person. I don't know how, whatever, because we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And so by creating community and really connecting with these people, you're only building together. It's a numbers game. It really is.
All right. So I want to give you some time to share how people can contact you. If someone vibes with you, for sure, connect with Mallory. What are you working on right now? And what would you like people to know?
So the biggest thing right now for me is obviously the event. We're coming up really, really quickly. It's September 30th. So if anyone's interested in more information on that, just go to malchilla.net. There's a whole page called the Fall Recharge Retreat. A bunch of different activities and speakers, like I said. You could also pick up the phone. I'm super, super old school. So the best way to get me is always by the phone. And it's 203-273-5256. Like, give me a call. I'm always going to answer. If I don't answer, I'll call you back. But, we'll talk about the event. We could talk about some coaching that I do as well if you're interested in that. Otherwise, just check out my Instagram. It's Mallory_Chila_.
Awesome. And it's a nice location. I mean, near the lake, nature, you got some interesting activities. I'm excited because I'm going. So if anybody, now that you have her phone number, she just threw it out there, give her a call, or you can contact me, whatever floats your boat. Very cool. I'm excited for this event. I'm excited for collabing with you in the future. It's funny because we're talking about networking, and I ran into Mallory at a networking event, and I'm like, I could have sworn I spoke to her before. And I approached it like that. I was like, oh yeah, how's it going? Like, we meet again. But now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, never spoke to this woman before in my life. And that is the funniest thing, because now I'm like, no, that was the first time. No, that was, and we connected really well. But I always say, if you run into somebody and you're like, I could have sworn I've seen them before, right? That's a huge sign. Go for it. Go for it. Mallory, thank you for coming on. This was an awesome conversation. Thanks for all the advice that I'm sure the audience is going to love it, especially if you're an entrepreneur, an empath, conscious creator, all the above, a truth seeker. It works. Thank you for coming on the show.
John, thank you for having me. And I'm glad we both decided to go to that event and we're able to connect there. And I'm hoping for a lot more collaboration and to do some more conversations in the future.